Hey guys, welcome back to Danger Planet. I'm Doug, I'm here with a bunch of friends, and today we're talking all about Fragged Empire.
Frag in?
This is Doug, I'm here with Brandon, and we have a really
Hello.
interesting, I think, an episode I've been excited for a while. We're talking to Wade of Fragged Empire fame. This gentleman is a very interesting individual who owns a indie game development company that does both TTRPGs as well as minis games. And he's on today to talk about his background, talk about his experience in the industry, talk about what his company is up to right now. And I have some questions for him specifically about some of his stuff. So, welcome to the Danger Planet, Wade. How are you, sir?
I'm good. Thanks so much for having me. It feels a little surreal chatting to you guys as I've been listening to your YouTube channel for so long.
Oh
Yeah,
my god.
it's Brandarius and I started this thing now almost like what 3 years ago. Brandon, feels weird to say that.
We filmed our first stuff in 2021, two.
I don't know.
Late 21, early
One of
20.
us should probably know the answer to that.
21. 22.
Feels
We'll say
irresponsible that
22.
we don't, honestly.
Let's say 22.
Anyway, I'm a huge fan of your stuff, man. I'm stand in sheer admiration of the amount of quality content that you produce. It seems crazy to me that a studio of your size makes that much cool stuff. So I'm a big fan. I think I'm really intrigued by your primary frag stuff, but all your other stuff that I was going through is impressive. So I guess the first question that we have for you is kind of who are you as a person, and not what is your background in like development, but what's your background in like wargaming and tabletop gaming and stuff? How did you get into that as a person?
Yeah.
Oh,
When did that happen for
wow!
you?
Like
Who are your people?
my nerd origin story.
Yeah.
That's it. That's what we call this from now on.
yeah,
That's what-
yeah. So
Correct.
I mean, I grew up in the '90s, or the noughties.
The Nazis.
The noughties, however
Yeah.
the kids are saying it these days.
I think most people probably in the US don't know what that means, but the early 2000s.
Early 2000s, yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I'm from Australia. I grew up in a country town, and I ended up connecting with some interesting guys when I was a teenager in high school, and they introduced me to D&D and a lot of that sort of nerd stuff. And
Do you remember what your first edition of D&D that you played was?
So, oh man, okay, so I have a great story here. So the first time I played D&D, I didn't really know what it was. I was at my mate's place. They were playing D&D second edition, and they had the weird uncle who was like the quintessential weird uncle with the long hair,
no.
hippie, doesn't really have a job. Was the dungeon master.
Okay.
And they let me play with them, and they got me to control a dwarf, and they basically said I wasn't allowed to say anything or do anything, and I had to hide behind a rock for the whole game session.
Amazing.
So they
And-
could have just not had a player controlling that dwarf.
Yeah, pretty much. I think it was an NPC that gave me control because I was just some little kid that was just happened to be there that night. And I watched them have this fantastic story where they thought they were going to fight a drake in a cave, and they discovered it was a dragon. Dragons are intelligent, so they like negotiated with it and like turned the dragon into like an ally who like slept on their cart as they wheeled it around. And my mind was blown. I'd never experienced any of this sort of free roaming idea. Like, I loved fantasy books, I love computer games and all that sort of stuff. And that was kind of my first experience with role playing. And after that, we did a lot of stuff. But here's the spicy bit to the story. There's more to it. My family were actually new Christians, and we got sort of caught up in the satanic panic a little bit.
Oh
there.
no. Satanic
So-
panic.
Yeah. And so I actually got myself grounded from playing D&D, and because my parents they didn't really know what it was. They were just kind of figuring out this Christian thing, and yeah. But then after that, we played role playing games, but we didn't actually play D&D. We played other games, and I grew up in a system with my friends and I. We didn't really go to conventions or know any other people did role playing, so we homebrewed a lot. In fact, we homebrewed like hell. And we
Yeah.
played a horrible rule system called the hero system, which we homebrewed the game mechanics of that. So my whole teen life was homebrewing. We
Yeah.
made up game rules. We made up like our worlds relentlessly.
That's
And
pretty
to
cool,
me,
honestly.
that's what role playing was. And then my early so I mean, we also played a lot of like Warhammer. Had my Space Marines back then.
Yep.
And did a bit of Magic the Gathering. Get your
Yep.
kids into Warhammer and Magic the
Wait, do
Gathering.
you still have any of your MTG singles, Wade?
No, I ended up selling all of my Magic cards and my Warhammer to my friends
Right.
later in life. But yeah, so I grew up in that sort of culture, and I've always liked game design, and it sort of just led into it. And then yeah, boom, bada bing, another big bunch of story, and I end up here. And I've been full-time RPG designer for about 10 years now. And I
Yeah.
always chuckle when people say, "Oh, your studio is so small," and I'm like, "That's an interesting way to describe me sitting in my office all by myself."
Just me. Yeah, no, I mean, listen, it checks the box when you're like, how many employees? 1 to 3? It's 1, but it's you. But that's fine,
That's
Danger
right.
Planet is like mostly me and Brandon. It's like, and we got our buddies helping, and Sam helps out obviously as well. But
Yeah,
it's like mostly a 2-person operation.
And that's
So-
it. Like I say, like, okay, it's mostly me, but I have friends who help me. Like I get freelancers who work with me. I've got freelancers who've worked with me for 10 years. They're kind of like part-time employees, but not technically.
Oh, I guess the only advantage that Danger Planet is, we do have a dog on the payroll. We have
Oh, yeah,
Taco Dog.
That's true.
She's here
Okay.
right now, actually.
Can I just say,
She's helping out.
shout out to that one weird uncle. I don't even know if Hasbro would have a market share if it weren't for you. So,
Oh, dude.
Oh,
Yeah.
no.
I think he's the real hero of this origin story.
I think it's such a cliche story in a way that I've got, and I love
It's
it.
pretty cool.
Yeah.
I mean,
Well,
it's
Before
it feels-
2015, I don't know how anyone got into D&D besides that.
Yeah.
Well, it's just it's a bit like I describe it as, like, it's a bit like drugs. If you want to, the best way to get into drugs is to know someone who's already into it.
Yeah. Yep,
Other than that,
exactly.
how the hell are you gonna do it?
Yeah,
Our
that
SEO is
and-
dropping before.
No, this is endearing. It's not.
This
It's
is
not weird.
endearing. This
It's
is
only
a
weird
sweet
if you make
story,
it weird.
guys.
It's only weird if you make it weird.
Yeah, this is a sweet story about personal growth and loving a thing.
Yeah.
All right. Anyway, so can you talk to us a little bit about like where you were at when you started the Fragged Empire as like your first thing, and then kind of how we've evolved to the point of where you are now, having published multiple successful games, having been on now what is the 2nd edition of your primary core product, having evolved a really unique and pretty cool minis game that we're going to talk about later off of your primary product. Like, can you talk about, like, in broad strokes, because I know it's been a really long journey to get to where you're at, but can you talk to me in broad strokes about, like, the journey, I guess, like, now that we know the origin story? Can you
This
talk
is
to
my
us about the
professional
journey?
story now.
Yeah.
Okay, so I ended up moving from the country to the city, to Melbourne, which is the capital of Victoria here. And I had a bunch of free time, and I thought, okay, I've always loved books. I've loved game design. I love RPGs. And I started designing my own RPG. My initial one was actually a fantasy game. And then I started doing a sci-fi, which turned into Fragged Empire. And I did that as a healthy way to spend my spare time. So, like, rather than computer games, I would sit home and design my own games. And I was a freelance graphic designer at this time, so I had some layout skills, some visual skills, and crowdfunding just started up. Kickstarter was becoming a big thing, and then it moved to Australia quite early on. And when that happened, I thought, okay, I'm going to take a shot at this. And so I put my project up on Kickstarter, and I thought, I'm just going to get a book. In fact, I'm probably going to get Kickstarter to make the book, and I'll probably still have to spend some of my own money to make it finish. And I thought it'll just be something that'll sit on my bookshelf, so when I'm an old man, I'll be able to point at it and say, I did that book, as sort of a vanity project. But it ended up going really well. much better than I thought. So I was effectively fired myself from my previous jobs, which was doing graphic design and some youth work. And then and that's what I've been doing for about 10 years. And I always describe myself a bit like a game master that's just gone a little bit nuts. Just as every game master is a bit of a game designer, and game masters and players get bored with settings and they like to make new worlds. That's exactly the same with me. I just make universes that I find fun, games that I find interesting, what I'm passionate about, and I like to move around, and it helps me to iterate and refine on what I'm doing. And yeah, so that's kind of with my RPG stuff. The wargaming one's been a little bit of an interesting one because I don't think I would say that I've successfully launched a wargaming product yet. But I've been developing one for a while because I've always loved minis, and my RPGs buck the trend in that they're very minis focused RPG. Combat is supposed to be on a grid, it's quite tactical.
Yeah.
I have crunchy rules, whereas the RPG world back when I started was really into rules light theater of the mind.
Yeah.
Everything's an
Your
iteration
combat
of
system is
D&D.
very crunchy.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, so I did something. I wanted something that really. I've always celebrated the cerebral aspect of games, like the logical kind of crunch side, but combining that with that more evocative, creative, the I don't know what you call, like the narrative side, we might say. And so I love games that really merge those two things together. And I've always wanted to do a war game, and I've started to get a lot more traction this year. I've had a couple of failed attempts at designing a war game. Failed because I've ended up making the whole system, not liking it, and throwing it out before I show anyone.
Oh no!
So I have a
Is that
shelf full of
wait, is
failed
that
games.
the equivalent of like scribbling down a game on a piece of paper, looking at it? It's like 20 pages of scribbles, just curling it, like throwing it in the garbage, and then writing another one.
A couple of those are multiple years of development and play testing, and
Wild.
and then get to it and think, nah, I don't like this. This is not working. It's not magic yet. And I think with my TableTop stuff, which I've been funding through Patreon for this last probably 8 months, I think, maybe. And with the invention of 3D printing, and with me just sort of growing a lot more, I'm feeling a lot more happy about it. And now my community is starting to enjoy the war game that I've made. And yeah, I'm interested to see where that goes. I feel established with my RPGs, but with the war game stuff, it's a bit of a new frontier for me still figuring it out. But I think
it's
I'm
interesting
happy,
to talk
yeah.
to you specifically about this because of what you mentioned, right? Like when I was preparing for this interview, I watched a bunch of stuff on Fragged Empire, and the consistent kind of like thing that stood out about your game was super immersive world building components, like very intimately thought out details about like the different races that live in your world and how those work. And then the other thing that everyone said was like, this dude has some thick combat rules. And like some people were like, and I loved it, and some people were like, and it was a little bit much for me. But like everybody agreed that you had very deep, complex combat mechanics baked into basically what is your rule sets across the board, which I found interesting because then obviously I know, watching these reviews and these things, that you've made a war game, which is, I would say, kind of more me and Brandon's specialty, right? Like that's more the world that Danger Planet lives in, is war games. But we also obviously all play like role play games and stuff like that. So it's an interesting kind of thought experiment for me talking to you about this specifically as a person that is, from my perspective, kind of melding the worlds of TTRPG and wargaming a little bit, and then literally also just making a war game now currently. So I find that pretty cool, honestly.
I've always considered wargaming and role-playing to be cousins. I mean, if you know anything about the origins of D&D, how it started off as chainmail, you'll get that. And I think you'll also find that a lot of people in my world of RPGs, what I've designed is quite crunchy. The combat is from the wargaming world, I think they'd look at what I've designed and consider it quite
Eloquent.
light,
Yeah.
or eloquent.
Oh, well,
Yeah.
what an eloquent, simple rule set. And the other people are like, man, screw Wade. It's too much. It's pretty funny. Yeah, no, I 100% agree with you. I think that that's true. So how old is, I guess, can you in your own words to the audience describe, because we've been talking about Fragged Empire and the Fragged Empire world, can you give us just like a 2-minute elevator pitch description of what the Fragged Empire world is, like the primary one that's on its second rule set now, and how it connects into the world of your TableTop game, and kind of what the vibe is there? Can you give us like a vibe check, Wade?
Yeah. Okay, so for Fragged Empire, which that's my flagship RPG, so it's a post-apocalyptic sci-fi. So the idea was that there was a big galactic war 100 years ago, and then following that was sort of Mad Max craziness. This is what happens next. Civilization is just now restarting. The various species are reconnecting with each other, returning to space, kind of a dawn of a new age vibe to it. So there's a lot of exploration, a lot of cultural tension. And you've got that, and all the different species are genetically engineered humans. Like, humans are actually the protogenitor species. They actually died out like 15,000 years ago, and they created a species to replace them, and then that species went and created all the playable ones now. And yeah, so a lot of it's got that kind of it's got a lot of different stuff going on it, in terms of like, you've got the Nephilim species, which are very Zerg-like, so it's kind of like biotech sort of stuff. And then you've got the Corp, which is the big megacorp company, and they are like a whole species that's discarded their racial identity and have embraced capitalism, have a lot of cyberpunk aspects
Space capitalism.
to it. yeah. But my I'm gonna, man, I should be more eloquent with my elevator speech, but I keep getting sidetracked.
No, this is great. You're doing amazing, Wade. Keep it going.
With the Corp though, it's not this cheesy capitalism, doesn't it suck? I have tried to show good and bad of that, in that yes, capitalism has a great central. The Corp have like very centralized power, great amounts of difference between the rich and the poor, but they're also like a meritocratic system. They're very anti. They don't care about like different being speciest against other ones and stuff like that. They just care whether you do a good job. They're actually really good at trade and have boosted the economy. And I've tried to do those sort of good and bad within each of the cultures, showing that. And so there's a lot of that interesting relationships there. And I think that makes for great stories to do with exploration, cultural tension, go out there, have adventures, very cowboy, bebop sort of going around, all that Firefly, ragtag group of misfits on a spaceship getting into trouble type stuff. In terms of TableTop,
which is the best vibe to have in space.
Yeah. Well,
that is the best vibe to have. I think Brandon and I both agree.
Yeah, and they just make for a great RPG session for that stuff. TableTop takes that same world, but you get to create your own force, and you can mix and match between the different species, or you can have a force that's just one particular species. You get a bit of an advantage if you have one particular one, but then if you mix and match, you get to take sort of you get to have more interesting combinations and take the best of each area sort of thing. And the idea is that you have these little squads. Each player has a squad, and they have a fight over a particular area, very sort of frontier town, battling for territory, or maybe you're doing a cyberpunk sort of, trying to get the data off the computer and get out sort of missions and stuff like that. Yeah.
It also has a really unique action limit mechanic in it, right? That.
Oh yeah.
Do you want to talk about that really quickly? Because that's like super fucking unique, honestly, and pretty cool.
See, this is an interesting thing for me. Because when I'm designing a game, and I do the same thing when I do an RPG, I purposefully don't go and play other games. I try and sit by myself in my own mental creative void and just come up with stuff. And the reason I do this is because if you play too much other stuff and you draw from too much stuff that other people done and how they've solved creative problems, you'll end up with games that feel like other people's games,
Mm-hmm.
And so I didn't even know this 20 action thing was unique or interesting. But you are not the first wargamer that's gone, oh, that's different. To me, it was just
it just made logical sense to you, and you were like, well, this is how long the game is. It's 20 actions.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
like
and so it fit what I needed to. So so the reason, and when I was coming up with this idea, I wanted a mechanism that not only controlled the length of the game, so each player just takes 20 actions. Okay, so the game's going to be this long. It needed to not only work for both large and small forces, because if you've got 20 units and the other guy's got 4 units, I don't want, one of you taking up more of the game time than the other person. And it also helped to add a cerebral sort of tactical aspect to the game, in that every time you're taking an action, you know that you are now 1/20th towards the end of the game, and you have to very carefully pick which unit you're going to activate. Because it's got a I heard someone describe it to me once, a bit like a chess-like activation, in that when it's your turn, pick any unit. Any unit can activate. It can be the same unit again and again and again if you want. But
you're using a finite amount of activations.
You are. Yeah. And so and it adds that. So so it's a game length controller. It makes it very interesting and tactical in how you spend this activation. The other component that combined to me coming up with this rule is a D20 is just a really easy to access object. And the idea is you put that on the game and you just track your activations with a D20. So I thought
you're like, how long should the game be? And then you like lean back in your chair, you're like scratching your head, you look at a D20, you're like 20 turns, and then that's
pretty much
how we got there.
Pretty much. I mean, if a D20
the man's a genius. The man's a genius. Okay. I mean, it's really cool. I was thinking about it when I was reading this, and I was like, that's a really interesting game mechanic to come up with, because it does feel a lot more like chess, like with like almost a timer attached to it. You can do however many activations of whatever many models you want, but like you have a distinct limit and you know exactly what that limit is, and that's a pretty cool concept.
It also helps to push the game forward because you can't turtle. In fact,
I know some friends that would analysis paralysis the shit out of this.
And
so.
if you can turtle, but there's a cost to turtling, because you're spending your turns holding back. And I'm like, well, you know, you got to pay for that end game if you take too long to move forward. And so I thought that was another interesting thing there too.
Yeah, that's probably my favorite thing about I mean, it's a cool system. I like it that you've made it relatively painless from a rules perspective. The whole thing is like a double-sided 8x11. The rules.
So so when I first designed the rules, I thought, okay, I want this to be. I was really inspired by OPR. I thought,
which is a great system. One-page rules is amazing.
Not necessarily in terms of their mechanics, but in the times of the what they were offering people is, here is the core rules on 2 sides of a paper. And so I did that. I designed my whole rules so they would fit on two sides of an A4 bit of paper. But I am designing a more rules booklet thing with much more examples and diagrams, because I think that helps clarity. But the actual rules themselves still fit on the 2 sides of a bit of paper. Yeah.
I think that's a great mechanic because it forces a couple of things. It forces accessibility, and it forces simplicity, and it forces you to get to the point with your rule system and not put too much fluff in there. So I'm a huge fan of that approach and concept, quite frankly.
I'm a big fan on quality over quantity. I like people solving game problems with the least amount of like moving parts as you can, but you want those moving parts to be able to do a lot with them.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. I'm way past the days of thinking that it is necessary or appropriate to have like a 55-page rule book for a war game. Like, you just don't need it in most cases, unless you're looking at like full open kimono errata text from a 15-year-old game. Then like, okay, sure, but like the core rule set you can get through in a more eloquent manner nowadays, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think examples count, right? Like, I think examples and stuff, those, add it, but towards the core rules.
Yeah.
Nice.
So do you have, I guess, can you talk to me a little bit about when, as I'm a little bit ignorant here, so I apologize, but when did you make the transition from your official first edition of Fragged Empire to Fragged Empire second edition? One of the things that stood out to me, like as a person who is an aspiring game designer, talking to an actual game designer, is like, was it a weird moment in time for you to have been doing this thing really long and then had enough success where you're like, okay, it's kind of time to go to a second edition of my like core product? Can you explain to me like how that felt and what that process was like for you as a studio?
Yeah. Okay, so I pretty much published my second edition of Fragged Empire about 2 years ago. I'm doing a
Okay.
second edition of my Fragged Kingdom game. It's getting crowdfunded right now, so that's one of my other settings. But I just found it very natural for me. I think I'd been doing it for about 8 years. I felt like I'd done lots of different settings, and every one of my books is kind of an iteration of my previous books. It's a refinement of my rule system. I'm learning. I was sort of experimenting. And I got to a point where I couldn't actually handle playing first edition of my Fragged Empire because it was quite old by that time. This was also during COVID lockdown period, and so I was super cooped up.
Do you mean that you'd played it enough and you'd thought of enough improvements that it like ate at your brain as you played it? Is that like what you're referring
in
to?
multiple ways? I think I'd already sort of thought about how many ways I wanted to change it and improve it. I'd made like 6 other settings using my rule system since it, which were just each one was incrementally better and better and better and better. And then I was just cooped up with COVID, and so I was super like, just I need to do something. And that basically, then I thought, okay, I'm going to do second edition of Fragged Empire. This wasn't a marketing decision or like I thought my audience would like it. I thought, no, I want to do this because I want to turn my baby into the best version that it possibly can be and bring to bear, all my experience and thought that I'd been doing. And then it just sort of burst out of me, and it was the easiest thing that I've ever made. Even though it took me like a couple of years to make it, because you got to commission the art, you got to write, and you got to organize stuff, and you got to get the rules done. But everything just came out. Every shovel that I put into the creative dirt of my brain just drew out gold. And so my Fragged Empire 2, I think, is definitely my best book I've ever made in every sense. But it was so easy to make. It was just, so that was great. I think like some of these bigger companies kind of think about, launch windows here, or customers would like this, and they'd like to, now's the time to sell new product. I don't work like that. I make new books when the lightning strikes.
Not at Fragged Empire Industries.
Yeah.
That's funny. That's not what I expected to hear you say, honestly. I expected to hear...
I mean, it makes sense though, right? Like I don't know how on with such a small scale of you, right?
How would Wade.
How
Operation
would you have
Wade.
the bandwidth to do like, marketing, like, just make books, that's what you want to do. It makes perfect sense.
That's effectively me. I just like making stuff. My big thing is I love making things. I love interacting with my community, and that's pretty much my whole business model is just that. I mean,
it's been successful enough to keep your shop going for a decade. You've made over, what is it? I think I counted over 12, 15 products at this point. And
at least that.
Now.
Yeah. I think I've got about 12 hardcover books, maybe. Yeah,
it's crazy, honestly. And I think the other thing that stood out to me about your products is that they're very nicely designed and they've got beautiful art. Sometimes you see other smaller studios and they don't necessarily have the budget or the resources or the time to like make it look super nice, so it comes out and it feels a little bit more indie. Sometimes it doesn't even have graphics,
See, I have a theory on this one. So back when I was first starting out, most indie RPG creators were primarily authors.
Yeah.
Okay. And in the past, most indie RPG guys were authors. And so their RPG products they came out were very word focused. And that means they had beautiful words, beautiful stories, beautiful, well written rules, you know. But then over this last decade, we've got lots of people from different backgrounds. And I think I was quite early on this one because I've got a graphic design background, are coming out with different flavored games, you know, much more visually appealing, because the creators are often artists, you know, and you
Yeah,
know
or
they're less,
designers or
yeah, or
art
less,
nerds or something.
yeah. When you're getting a different type of people, I'm not as sure of what it's like in the wargaming indie sphere. I get a feeling that a lot of the indie wargame creators are kind of game designers first, I might think.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah,
and
mostly.
that'll be interesting to see whether I can have much of an impact because I come in from an arty sort of visual background, an RPG background. Whether that'll give my stuff a unique flavor, I don't know. Time will tell. But,
Your rules are really unique and cool. Like I looked at them. Like Brandon and I are
Yeah.
steeped in indie wargaming, my man. Let me tell you, Mr. Wade. And
Kind of our bread
I
and
looked at
butter.
your rule set and was like, oh, this is super cool.
Yeah, I was
Like
looking through TableTop earlier tonight.
I thought it was
wild.
really dope. Like I literally wrote down, ask Wade about 20 action limit per game. Really cool idea, and then underlined really cool idea 3 times. And it's the 3rd time that I underlined the thing on the sheet that you know I really mean it, Wade. So I'm a huge proponent of this game. By the way, guys, so everybody knows, we're gonna have all of the Fragged Empire stuff linked below, including Wade's Discord, so you can go and jump and be a part of that community. We'll add a Fragged Empire thing to our Discord, so if you want to discuss it there and the other indie games that we do, but there'll be like all of the linked resources to the stuff Wade does, to if you want to buy it. You guys can check all that stuff out. I guess, Wade, do you have anything else you want to talk about? I mean, I've mostly run through most of the stuff I wanted to talk to you about, which is, I think a Danger Planet record, a 30-minute episode for Danger Planet might be a speedrun record, but is there anything else that you want to talk about, like either about being an indie board game publisher, or sorry, a indie games publisher because of the many different types of games that you do, or about stuff that you're working on right now, a current project, or about stuff that's coming out for you soon that you want to highlight? Is there anything like that you want to cover?
Oh man, I love talking shop. I'm always down for that sort of chat. But I think probably like I mean, is this sort of where people could find my work sort of question?
Yeah, sure. Or yeah, absolutely. Tell us where people can find your stuff.
Sure. So my website, fraggedempire.com, kind of has links to all my various products and stuff that you can get. Modifius, they stock all of my RPGs. They're kind of they're my big distributor. If you're interested in TableTop and what I'm doing with that, so I'm running a Patreon called Fragged Miniatures Plus. And I'm sending out new 3D printable miniatures every month, and that's helping to sort of fund and flesh out TableTop. And if you've got an interest in Fragged Kingdom, which is my techno-magical sci-fi, techno-magical fantasy RPG set in the Fragged Empire universe, that's being run on Backer Kit right now. Yeah.
And you have your Discord, remember to pitch your Discord.
Oh, yeah. And there'll be a link to my Discord. And
Yeah,
if you love talking about RPGs or Fragged or just any sort of nerd stuff, like come by my Discord and say hi. I'm super proud of my community. Like it's really nice. They're very active. And that's, yeah, I really love Discord. Discord has been, I wish it was around back when I was starting.
Yeah, Discord is sweet. We have a pretty active Discord, and it's really nice as a way to just connect with like different people that are into the same type of stuff that we are. So yeah, you should check all that stuff out. We'll have this all linked in the video, guys, in the body, so you can check it out. Brandon, do you have anything you want to expound upon before we bid farewell to the internet?
I mean, we covered a lot. I think I don't know. What? How? Where? Why? What's okay? So sci-fi. So do you have any? I mean, I guess do you have any like crazy like real influences on Fragged, or were you just like I really want to come up with this concept? Like you mentioned sort of Mad Max before. Have you? I wonder if you've messed around with or read any like the Numenera stuff, because there's maybe a little bit of vibe in like that as a premise, but obviously Fragged is more.
Was it
I want
all
to say
the Wade
realistic
brain
and
space,
less
the Wade
magic-y
brain
nonsense,
space,
but
or
there
like
is
did you
magic
have
stuff. Yeah.
a thing you pulled this from?
Yeah.
Oh, double tap 3x4 question mark question mark question mark.
You can only answer one question at a time, Brandon.
Oh man,
Oh.
okay, a few questions there. What one do you want me to start with?
3x4. I want a 3x4. That's such an interesting table size.
Oh, dude. Okay, so I ummed and ahed over my table size so many times. I thought, okay,
Yeah.
classic 3x3. Then you could sort of that gives you 4 possible deployment zones, you know, when selecting, and that's sort of the nice sort of thing. But I ended up going the 3x4, so it's longer, because I wanted your movement and your range of your units to be quite important. So if you put one unit on one side of the battlefield, they're just simply not going to be able to get to the other side of the battlefield, because I want movement to be quite important. Like, because your classic game of double tap, you've got these 3 objectives in the middle that you're going to try and capture. There's some variation in that, but some units' actions might be really good at shooting but not have much movement, whereas others give you lots of movement and not much shooting. And I wanted that movement to feel really important. It's not just can I get to cover sort of movement or get into optimal range sort of thing. It's like, no, it's like just as important as your ability to shoot is your ability to move.
Tethered together with the action limit of the game is really cool, because there's like a very serious defined, like this guy could only ever get like maybe 3/4 of the way up the board if he wanted to, right?
Yeah.
Even if
I
you
wanted
bumped him.
wanted that to be really important. I found that 3x4 it's slightly long, and it makes it important. Yeah.
Interesting. Okay, but interesting answer. Yeah. So fragged like the core Fragged universe was your first bit, your first Kickstarter. What? It's such an interesting idea. Post apocalypse. What were your influences? Like what'd you?
Yeah. Okay. So when I'm creating, and I was aware of this back when I was starting out, is when I'm creating a universe, I often try and find particular narrative pillars that are kind of holding up the entire setting, or like things that can really have all other ideas orbit around it. Because if you get too many different stuff, you end up with a bit of a buffet sort of approach to a setting, and I generally don't like to do those. So for Fragged Empire, some core pillars that I had. One was post-apocalyptic, which was a term that nobody had ever, like, people know post-apocalyptic, but post was sort of a new and fresh thing, particularly when I was starting. And I thought that sort of dawn of a new age vibe felt good. There was, who is the actor that played Hercules back in the day?
Oh, Kevin Sorbo.
So Kevin Sorbo.
Spacey.
Kevin Sorbo was in a sci-fi, and I can't even remember the name of it. And it was like this obscure sci-fi that barely anyone's ever watched. And in that was sort of this idea of like, the world was sort of Star Trek-y goodness and amazing.
Oh, Andromeda?
That's it. And Andromeda.
Yeah, oh, I remember Andromeda.
And then he sort of came back, okay? And there was something in that I thought was actually quite clever. And I liked that sort of dawn of a new age sort of.
I forgot that was him. Wow. Oh, maybe I mentally blocked it out.
Yeah.
I don't like that. I don't like that guy. He's not great. But, yeah, wild. Okay. Yeah. Okay. I see what you're going.
And I also really loved Farscape. I love puppets.
Farscape for sure. I love
Everyone
Farscape.
loves Farscape. Man, okay.
Ooh,
and so that was connected to my second pillar, which was sort of this idea of cultural tensions on really interesting species. And so to do that, I was very inspired by Farscape. But I also wanted to say, well, how do I really amplify this and make it different? I removed humans. There are no humans in Fragged Empire.
Yeah, I love the concept of it's an intellectual property that's like no humans. Let's go.
Yeah, just to make it a bit different. And then I really love human psychology. I'm very interested in sort of cultural evolution and
Yeah.
politics and ideology and all this sort of stuff. Like what makes a person, that whole nature versus nurture questions.
Mhm.
And so I've really dived into that with all of my species. And so that's
Yeah,
sort
they
of the
see
second
just
pillar.
from looking at the Frag Second Edition Kickstarter. I literally earlier today I was just reading through all the playable race descriptions, and that is very apparent from.
Yeah,
Yeah, they're
yeah.
very deep. There's a lot of depth to all of them.
They're
To be
like
honest.
ogres.
Mhm.
They've got layers.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
okay.
And so I really enjoy that
I
sort
like
of
the
stuff.
Legion the most. That's my
Oh
favorite
yeah,
backstory.
oh yeah.
No, I think Nephilim is.
No, the
That's what
Legion is my
no.
favorite by absolute country mile
I think I play
for
Nephilim
sure.
in 100% of
Nope,
circumstances.
Legion all the way.
um, and the third sort of thing that I like to do is when I'm designing a game. This is also my mechanics and my lore. I like to work in thirds, so I like to go a third very familiar, a third kind of original and interesting or a new take on an old concept, and then a third very original and very weird. And so
Yeah.
that's kind of how I structure stuff. That's more of a game design, writer, creator sort of framework that I've got. And I apply that to all of the species as well. I thought, okay, Legion. Oh, yeah, big lizard monkey people with red armor, super soldiers with big guns. Oh, yeah, they kind of got Greek and Roman names. Very easy to get into. You kind of get it. But then you go a little bit deeper and deeper until you get to an interesting little twist on each of them. Is that the Legion, for example, everyone in their society, everyone wants to be a soldier. No one wants to be a plumber or an accountant, or a factory worker. And so the government has reverse propaganda posters with like, have a baby for victory, or do you have the strength to be a farmer?
That's
And there's
amazing.
this story in the book of these Legion soldiers marching down the street, and a factory shift gets off work, and the factory workers all float out of the factory, and all of the soldiers stop, stand to the side of the road, and salute the factory workers. Because in Legion society, to be a civilian is viewed as a greater personal sacrifice. And so that's my kind of my interesting little twists that I put into it.
Yeah,
They
Legion
kind of,
is base, dude. Legion
yeah,
is
and
super
then there's
base.
sort of, and it's that kind of ease in with the easy to get, and then start to get more interesting as the deeper you go. And it also means that people who are consuming it, like if it's too weird right out of the box, you'll choke, but you sort of ease
You
into
can't
it.
kill. You
And
can't kill him with weirdness. Wade, Fragged Empire.
yeah, you got to ease
You can
people
only
in.
just you gotta slow frog cook 'em boil in weirdness, so that the weirdness level goes up and up and up, and then they just don't realize they're just steeped in it.
The interesting level goes up and up and up, but also people get to choose how deep they go into it. They can
Sure.
take a Legion character and go, oh, I'm a big guy with a big gun. I go, ugh, and that's great. Or they might go a Legion who's like, I'm like a political revolutionary who wants to, fight against my system and its attachment to the corp and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, Legion's great.
Yeah.
TLDR, Legion's the best Legion. Legion's the best in the book. So
Nah,
if that's what you
we're
came here to read.
we're dissolving Nature Planet. That's it.
All right. So I mean, thanks for coming on, Wade. This has been interesting to hear you talk about all of the different experiences that you have as a designer who's now been. It's interesting too because you started at a time before stuff like 3D printing and stuff like Discord existed, and you've persisted through that, which is fascinating to me. And you've kind of thrived through that, it's just interesting to talk to you about your design philosophies and how you come up with different like instances of your games, and it feels like the pervasive answer that you've given us has been like, because I love doing it, and it's a creative and fun idea that I had that I felt passionate about, and that's like really cool to hear, because it like warms the cockles of my mostly cold dead heart, basically. To hear a person that is actively successful and thriving, but doing so by virtue of doing the thing that they love and being fairly uncompromising about it, which is like a very admirable thing that I like just like, and I'm like, man, good for Wade. Like, just doing the thing he loves and not compromising, because that's just how Wade works. Is like that's Wade's creative process. It blew my mind to hear you talk about how it was the easiest thing in the world to take your Gen 1 revision and make it into a second edition. I would have thought that would have been an arduous, like, uncompromising process of like reconstruction, and you're like, nope, it was supernatural and easy. And it was like, wow, it's not really what I thought he would say there. And a bunch of different points in the conversation were like that for me. So, thank you for the context, because this was really fun and interesting to hear as a person who is kind of going through the initial iterations of making their first game and working to become kind of like a little mini indie studio. And it's fascinating to hear from someone that's now been doing it for over 10 years, which is crazy to hear. So I really appreciate you coming onto the planet. My plan, it would be to bring you back and kind of check up on things as things are happening. So you guys probably have not heard the last of Wade nor Fragged Empire. And like I said, we're going to link everything that we talked about in the video today into the body of this video, so you can get access to Wade's Discord. You can find where he has his primary products hosted. You can find where his publisher is if you want to check out his different games. And I can link a couple of other overview videos that I thought were really cool and did a good job highlighting some of the stuff Wade's up to. I guess the last thing that we always ask people to do, Wade, is to bid farewell to the internet. So Wade, would you please do the honors and say goodbye to the internet for us?
Goodbye, internet. I will see you soon.
Goodbye,
Excellent.
the internet.
Say, Wade did it really smoothly. We got to get everyone to do it that level,
No. Hey everyone, thanks for stopping by the planet. You can check out the video description below for all of our important info and links. You can see a link to the Discord if you want to come be nerds on the internet with us. We have channels for like all the games that we're playing and all of our community members are excited about. You can also check out all of our affiliate links for like our Redbubble merch store, our Pro Acryl discount code, because they make the best hobby supplies on our planet and yours. And of course, our weird affiliate link if you're buying Malifaux stuff straight from Jonathan Q. Weird himself. Most importantly, though, you can see a link to our Patreon where I post things from time to time, like behind the scenes cuts or early vids, and we even have a tier where I'll bake you cookies and send them to you in real life. Thanks a ton to our current patrons who cover the cost of all of our software to make these videos, and we couldn't do it without them. You can see their names appearing now across the screen. And until next time, goodbye the internet. We did it!